mind, it would be great if folks will either put your name on your, if you know how to rename yourself, and also let's chat who is here. Because I think we have some new folks joining us. We do these regularly. If you're new, I'm Shannon Rudisill. I'm the Executive Director of the Early Childhood Funders Collaborative, and what you are joining is our every other week conversation that we have been doing since April of 2020. And it tends to be a mix of experts coming in periodically and then open peer sharing. And we don't exactly alternate back and forth, but we roughly alternate back and forth. And so today what we have is a peer discussion. And then you'll hear from us at the end of the time, the next time we get together on November 18th. We're excited that the new Executive Director of the National Black Child Development Institute, Leah Schott's, going to be joining us. So, but today we have a peer discussion, and we've got, I think, a critical mass to start. So I'm going to kick us off and just say a little bit about what we're going to do today. So again, I'm Shannon Rudisill, the Executive Director of the Early Childhood Funders Collaborative, and I can tell from the high interest that we had on our registrations today that what has been happening here in DC is of great interest to folks. We're happy to see so many of you here. We have folks, I think I saw Waialeale from all the way from Hawaii, all the way, we have East Coast to Hawaii here. So we have a wide range of folks. And what we are not going to do is we're not going to go over what's in the Build Back Better Act. So hopefully you saw our recommendation that you listen to some of the webinars that happened earlier in the week. And also the Hunt Institute has what I think is the first kind of précis of what's in there. And we'll send that out after to everybody who's been on. I think there'll be more summaries coming out. But we didn't think that was the best use of our time because it wasn't signed yet. And there will be lots of opportunities for us to read documents and have webinars about that. What we wanted to talk about today is how are we going to work together around implementation of what is happening in the public policy space. And I have to say that we think and we hope and indications are good that we'll get a very transformative investment in the Build Back Better Act. But even if we're still waiting, ECFC has been engaged with support from Packard Foundation and many of our fellow funders here on talking about how we would support states in implementing the American Rescue Plan, which was also a transformative investment. Even if we didn't have the prospect of the Build Back Better Act, the Rescue Plan itself put more money into these programs than we previously had. And so we've learned a lot from our conversations and trying to coordinate both national and state and local funders around the rescue plan. And we thought this would be a great day just because people are getting so excited to say a little bit about what we've learned and then to have y'all break up and do some chatting. And I would say that for us, we sort of have two goals. We consider this the first of many, or actually a milestone conversation in the middle of a longer conversation that would inform our plans in 2022 and 23 around this implementation agenda. And what my hope is for you is that you will walk away with something concrete from today, an idea from a peer or a new relationship you didn't have before, somebody that you can follow up with, some work to learn about, and collectively we'll leave better informed about how we can work together and ways ECFC can support. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over. Most of this intro portion is going to be led by Rachel Schumacher, who has been leading our work on coordinating around the rescue plan. And I want to warn you up front, then we're going to go into some breakout groups for y'all to share with each other. And I'm going to exhort you not to leave when we get to the breakout group portion, because we have just done a round of talking one-on-one with over 25 of you. And what we heard number one thing you want is concrete ideas from each other. And so that we're going to go into breakout groups to do that. So without further ado, Rachel, take it away.
Thanks, Shannon. Hi, everybody. It's so great to see so many faces today and so much interest in this topic. And I hope you understand why we're not going to go through this bill, because it's changing all the time. And we feel, as Shannon said, there's a lot going on. You already have great opportunities to get involved as a funder in building capacity for equitable implementation, because you've got, we got this 50 billion kicking around. We actually have quite a few states that haven't gotten their stabilization funds out for childcare. So there's a lot to do. And what we wanted to do today is we really focus in on the funder role, but we really want to make sure you have a chance. We have been doing some work together, and we wanted to make sure that we started with this message of success and the potential of what funders can do when they do work together. Because we did have a really great opportunity. A bunch of folks, about 11 or 12 funders, came together in April, and within 6 months had made some pretty serious changes in the funding available to organizations to work on implementation. And I want to, you know who you are. Thank you so much for all the time you spend in this process. So those folks came together and met several times on the American Rescue Plan. We started in a sense of incredible urgency, meeting weekly, and then we sort of slowed down as we had our framework together. Many of you may have seen some of our resources, but if you're new, we'd love you to check out. We did a framework, which I'm going to share with you momentarily, about just how to think about, like, what is the opportunity? What can funders do that will get us to equitable implementation? We did a memo on that topic, and we also did a tip sheet for state funders based on the input of the state funders in the group. And so this had national and state funders in it. $11 million was awarded over this time period, and some is still pending around this framework. So this is a positive impact story, I think. And was getting a lot of opportunity to talk because the implementation is such a thorny and ongoing issue. We really wanted to, the funders wanted to keep talking, and they're really focusing around this issue of building state capacity. Compensation is this thorny issue that keeps going on, and pathways attached to it, really thinking about racial equity and gender equity for early educators. And we keep talking about, is there some way for national and state and local funders to be working together? And, one of the reasons some of these issues remain so sticky is that, despite the fact that a lot of us were trying to message right away that this is a transformational investment in early care and education, and certainly in childcare, we heard a lot of things that were challenging in states that we want to share with you. I'm going to give you some takeaways in a minute. And a lot of states saying this is one-time money. And so the other opportunity to reframe now, as we all see, is if this new resource becomes available from the federal level, that goes away as a reason why we can't solve some of these hard issues. And it gets down to, how are we going to do it? So the buckets we really helped frame, that the group framed out, were around the need for grassroots and advocacy advocacy to ensure stakeholder engagement, that we wanted to center the voices of those most impacted by the COVID pandemic and the economic recession. We wanted to also be really addressing the capacity. That we want strategic good choices. We want great policy choices and good uses of finances, and something that's really going to add up to a permanent change in the way systems work. But that wasn't necessarily going to happen if folks didn't have the capacity to really think systemically. And we wanted to be able to support opportunities to document impact, because telling the story and shaping the narrative around how useful these dollars are can really be very helpful, sustaining them over time, as well as sort of keeping an eye on how they're implemented. So you see that they really are equitable in how they're implemented. And we've learned that a lot from our grassroots work that we've been doing with Raising Child Care Fund, how important it is to keep that on your mind, and how important those groups are at making sure programs get implemented the way you hope they would. I forgot to introduce myself in that I am a consultant. I've been working with ECFC for 3 years as the project director for the Raising Child Care Fund. And when this ARP came along, Shannon and I decided it would be great to keep partnering on this issue too. So what have we learned? So I spent some time talking to our state funders, really listening to them in our groups, as well as reaching out to some folks who do consultation with states and have been helping them during this time to try to just get a sense of what's been so hard. And it's pretty clear there's a huge variation in states and implementation speed. There's been other challenges around the state legislature. The bottom line is there's not a one size fits all approach to every state in terms of how you can help them and what might be holding them back. And the two major takeaways are that we're still having a challenge in keeping the equity focus, keeping parents and early educators in the center of decision making. We've had states tell us things, state advocates tell us these stories about how, well, during the pandemic, we did all these things to help the state have listening sessions through Zoom. Everyone got really tech savvy. But then when it came time to set up an advisory that was going to be more permanent, we were sort of going back to things like, oh, hey, you administrator, you're also a parent, you count for parent voice. That's not what we mean by centering parent voices, and we don't want to go back to that. And the other one was around there's two kinds of capacity. Someone wrote in their question about what they wanted to talk about today. What does capacity mean? It's both the project management and vision to sort of have a systemic approach that brings everyone together that needs to be there and comes up with a great plan. But it's also that states just do not have the people to implement this. They don't have the analysts. They don't have the busy bees to do all this work. And they used to administer on childcare, especially, that was an $8 billion program, and they don't have the staff. So we are very lucky to have a lot of state funders on this call, really excited about how many state and local funders are on this call. And we did reach out to get a couple of folks who are going to help us with our breakouts and lead the breakout conversations. So Madeline Bayard from Rodell in Delaware is going to join us to talk about some of these topics. Let me just set it up, and then and others that you bring to the table. But we really want to take a chance to let everyone sit in a breakout room and talk to each other and hear what each other have been doing, and be able to come up with some ideas for what funders can do in their states and together, and also opportunities to tell us what ECFC can be doing to support that work. We wanted to, in the capacity building area, here's some of the ideas that have come up. They're around trying to help with this visioning and project management issue by creating a consulting pool, convening stakeholders and starting to bring together all the players, and establishing fellowships or some kind of structure to be able to pull in more people to work in this exciting field of childcare and early education and early childhood development in general that we have as an opportunity now. And how can national state funders work together? So Madeline, can I ask you to just say a couple words about why you think this is so important and why you were willing to be part of this breakout session?
Absolutely, and a little bit about our experience in Delaware. So Rodell is part of our community foundation, and we also work in advocacy spaces and we are a partner with national foundations. We mostly work in the K-12 space. So some of this experience is lessons brought from working with national foundations to be the intermediary to kind of manage those resources on the local level. I mean, first, to just name the landscape we're in addition to state agencies being understaffed, they have more responsibility now than ever. And they're mostly staffed with people, at least in Delaware, with field experience who've never done systemic change. They have had program experience. They also don't know the national level. They don't know all the resources that we all know and all the organizations that are available to help them. And so I think, we really have to think about this as a major step change. This is building a system in a way that we've never had as early childhood. This is a different kind of skill and thinking and capacity that I think is needed. And just, in terms of what we've seen on the K-12 side, not that this has always worked perfectly, but national firms have invested, with us, major dollars in national consulting firms. I mean, over the years between Race to the Top, Early Learning Challenge, PDG, we've worked with McKinsey, BCG, EY Parthenon, Ed First. I mean, we've brought in major teams to augment the capacity of the state. And we've either been the fiscal agent for those private resources, or we've done a contract with the consulting firm and the state has done their share as well. I think the key to that is having a local partner who can be there when the national consultants go away, but also be this intermediary organization. And we're very fortunate to do that, because we have flexible staff that we can kind of loan to these efforts, and we intentionally say we're going to do that. In K-12, people call these harbor master organizations or quarterback organizations, but they're the ones kind of helping navigate what national resources and how can they be leveraged, in the early learning space. So we've done things like been the fiscal agent for a fellow, something that's mentioned on here. The fellow works for the department. They're 100% assigned to the department, but just to get it going and to deal with some of the benefits issues and those kinds of things, we've done the contract for it. And I think, the key thing about finding those trusted intermediaries, or whatever organization term you want to use, is these are people who are going to be here regardless of who's in the administration, elected or appointed. I mean, we've been here now for 3 gubernatorial administrations and multiple administrators. So we know the people. We have more institutional knowledge sometimes than the people running the program. And to the equity point, I think, we know who needs to be involved. National consultants don't know how to make sure parents and child care providers are at the table. They don't, those people aren't going to come if they are not invited by a trusted local partner. So I think that's a key point. And the other thing to think about is, who's the local expert that can help bring in the national resources? So I think Elizabeth's on the call, and I don't think our state would know about Children's Finance Project, or even, how NACI can help us with our workforce, compensation scale, or bringing in Simon and Gina to work on cost modeling. They wouldn't know how and when and to plug those people in. And so we've been able to kind of do some convening. That's one of these things, convening stakeholders, just to expose them to what are we even talking about at a national level, and who's available, to help us do that. So those are some of the lessons, I think, when we look over the years at what we've done in K-12, and probably what we need to be thinking about in the early learning field as we look at ARP and potential, federal reconciliation dollars. I hope that's helpful.
I bet a lot of people want to ask you a lot of questions about everything you said. And if you do, you can go to Madeline's breakout session, which will be called State Capacity. And we also wanted to give you choices, because we know folks have different areas of focus in their work. So the other area you can choose to go focus in on is this area of advocacy and grassroots needs. So why do we need to have this focus? Haven't we won at the federal level? What do we need to be doing now? Well, there's a lot here that needs to be watched. And we're not going through the details, but we have looked at it enough to know that, it's optional. We have to get states to draw down this money, and hopefully we'd like them to draw down both childcare and pre-K. And I know I'm talking about it like it's already happened. Everyone knock on wood. We're just projecting. We also want to center these voices, as we keep saying. There are provisions for totally redoing the rating system tied to quality standards and cost estimates, probably revamping your QIS, since it's going to be pretty important to tie these payments to. There's a requirement to do wage scales and create pathways to licensure, since providers will need to be licensed in the childcare side. And let me tell you, not all of them say exactly, that stakeholder voices need to be centered in those conversations. So that means you have to make that happen. Then there's obviously the overarching issue of, we really want this to be birth to 5, not just, we don't want to leave out the babies. And we want mixed delivery. How is that really going to work? So there's a lot of need for those voices to be part of that, as well as, some people are studying what happened when the Obamacare came into play, and that there were legal challenges and other types of pushbacks that we should be preparing for. So I did ask, and I saw her sign on, I did ask Christina D'Alessandro, who is with the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, and new to this, I was so excited to see her sign up on this because I know her from her previous role. Christina, do you want to jump on just a second and say something to this, just share a little bit about your perspective around the role of advocacy and grassroots in shaping state agendas?
Yeah, so absolutely. And thank you, Rachel. And I'm excited to be here. This is my first time as I started a new role at the Charitable Foundation on Monday. Previously was with Moms Rising, and I think saw some of you in that capacity. But I think it's absolutely essential. And coming from a state which currently doesn't have any state dollars in pre-K, we envision that as an opportunity to really build a comprehensive mixed delivery system. But what is going to stay on through all of the political discussions and debates are going to be the voices of both the early educators and the parents and families, to make sure that the delivery happens in the way that we all want it to, and the way that makes sense for the individual states that we live in. So I am, obviously near and dear to my heart. And I think ensuring that we embed those parent and provider voices throughout the system is absolutely critical. And I think, once again, learning from each other, and I think how we are defining a mixed delivery system within our context, what makes sense, is going to be absolutely critical here. But getting our advocate voices, they have the connections, as Madeline mentioned, often with the community. So we need to make sure that if our North Star is an equitable system, that we're engaging the people who in fact have those relationships at the community level, because I think we often hear from voices, but it can be the same voices. So hope to see some of you in my session.
Great, thank you, Christina. So, all right, I know folks probably have some questions. What we'd like to do is have you take your burning ideas and reactions and pick one of these topics to go into a breakout room, and our wonderful colleague April will give everybody those options. In the breakout rooms, you will find the folks who talked, and Shannon and I will cover them as well in one or the other. And what we'd love you to do is, we'll actually try to take some notes, so we'll probably try to cover that. But we'd love you to go into this conversation. We have 2 questions we would hope you get a chance to address. What actions can funders take in their states and together? Because there is this issue of how state funders are looking to national funders for partnership. And the other question is, how should this federal opportunity shape ECFC's work plan for the next few years? Now, Shannon and I will be there writing down our ideas and takeaways from what you say, but we just love to get our ideas from you when you're having this conversation. Be prepared. We're going to hopefully come back. Let's see, we have probably enough time for 20 minutes and then come back for 10 minutes of conversation, if I have my clock correct. Does that sound right, Shannon? Okay, so we're gonna let you guys pick one of the breakout rooms and go on and share ideas and have a great conversation. And we'll see you back in 20 minutes to share out your most compelling ideas. All right, my group, I immediately went over and tried to say, give us 5 more minutes, but Zoom had other ideas. So sorry to cut off that conversation because it was a really good one. And it just shows how much people can learn from each other when they get talking about the things they've done. And I didn't even get to say the thing about, I didn't even get to do my plug of the Raising Childcare Fund, which is, of course, is a model of national and state funders working together to fund grassroots organizing. And we're in 15 states now. So if you want to know more about that and you're new to hearing me go on and on about the Raising Childcare Fund, I'll put something in the chat, but you can also email me. Shannon, I'll turn it over to you.
So we have about 10 minutes, and we thought it would be great, just since probably folks wish they could have been in both conversations, to just take a couple of minutes, not a formal report out, but asking folks to share anything that they heard that they're taking away that they think is actionable either for yourselves or for ECFC, so that folks have a chance to hear a little bit of the conversation they weren't in. I'll throw it open. Could call on somebody, but I've been trying to learn to pause. Madeline, do you want to say a little bit about what happened in our group then, and we'll let Christina say a little bit about what happened in the other group?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about some of the challenges of the politics of money at the state level and how to work with locals if that happens. We talked about the challenge of open positions in state government, which I think most of us were nodding, that even the positions they have are not filled. And a few of us I know Connecticut, and we have funded, you know, with administrations that were willing to work with us, we've directly funded a recruitment firm to go look for people and help fill positions on, you know, multiple different reasons. One of the ones that came up was if a whole new group of people was being formed or a whole new team. Yeah, and then I think just the practical things of intermediaries helping getting money out and needing a whole infrastructure for a whole lot more money coming, which Elliot's paper, I think, starts to get toward, you know, what kind of infrastructure might we need beyond what the state even has in place. But what did I miss?
One thing that struck me on the intermediary conversation that we had was Waialeale in Hawaii mentioned that one of the roles that Kamehameha and Hawaii Community Foundation has been playing is strengthening the state, yes, but also helping the state and the board, the governing board, get comfortable with the idea that intermediaries and nonprofits are going to need to take a piece of this work for a while. Did I get that right, Waialeale? It sounded like you're using some of your social capital there to be like, okay, guys, like we need to let the nonprofits take some of this until you can do more.
Yeah, like trying to negotiate that space, because we have community organizations that are ready and have the capacity, and as funders, we want to support that capacity because we want pieces to move, knowing that the state, we're very, very slow. And so, yeah, sort of negotiating the space between the state board efforts and community grassroots efforts, and how do we allow them to work together towards the same goal, but honoring their strengths.
So I'll just say in our group, we heard some good examples of when things sort of worked in San Diego, when there was the same collective group of voices that were making the same kind of asks, and the impact that can have on the decision making, and that very early on led to some very clear allocations of CARES funding, and there was some discussion about like how do we get that sort of happen again, with a recognition that the way that the funding in Build Back Better is potentially going to be delivered is going to increase some tensions, and that the K-12 system is going to be taking a different role and may have a different structure to move the dollars, which might sort of compete. And then we heard some great examples, and I hope Robin will talk about some work that's happening in Pennsylvania around really bringing together folks at the county level. I think there was agreement that that's a potential way to access dollars. And I did speak from New Hampshire as being a state that might have some challenges in choosing to accept the money, that the more local that we can get in terms of building the capacity and building the collective will, it's going to increase the chances that the state, despite the decisions made at the top, that we're going to have an incredible sort of amount of action and excitement and pressure to accept the dollars at local levels. But Robin, I don't know if you wanted to say more about your project.
Sure. So I've been working as a fellow with the Heinz Endowments for the last almost 12 months. And I was sharing in our small group that a big part of the work that we did to help bridge the I guess kind of gap of understanding, whatever you want to call it, between the philanthropic space, grassroots, and those that make decision makers, we commissioned Child Trends to help us to talk with grantees that we had. And then we additionally asked them to talk with, other grassroots organizations that maybe perhaps Heinz had not funded, but maybe they should be considering in future grant cycles. And really what we wanted to find out from them is not just only what's the work that they're doing, but who are the people that they may not have had access to that they feel that they really would need to move their work forward, as well as what they needed in addition to just like funds. And overwhelmingly, grantees and the other grassroots organizations that we spoke with, they both really said the same thing. We need to be able to talk to decision makers. We do so much on the ground. We're trying to make sure things work, but it would be so much better if we could actually talk to the county, or we could talk to leaders that are in, more influential, larger organizations and actually collaborate. And so the work that I've been doing through the Prenatal to 3 Fellowship is organizing these working groups. And a big commitment to our grantees is that we are guaranteeing that in these working groups, we'll have systems level reps working alongside the nonprofit leads. And so that's a bit different. There was a little bit of pushback at first, but now it's making a lot more sense to everyone, because what will hopefully happen is that we'll see opportunities where private and public dollars can be leveraged, and people can put their heads together on how to make outcomes happen, but then also maybe perhaps even influence how decision makers are making those decisions, right? Because if I can hear from the grassroots organization that supports, moms with doulas, maybe I need to think about our upcoming budget slightly differently, or I can leverage some of the ARPA funds in a different way than what I was thinking. So the goal is just to bring people together from different circles that tend to sort of operate in separate silos, break those walls down, and then really come up with some unique funding opportunities that will hopefully we'll be able to leverage both the private and the public sector to make some things happen.
One of the other themes we heard is just the fear people have in these official capacity jobs at all levels of government about making a mistake using the money. That is sort of speaks to the challenge it will be if Build Back Better is passed, to switch from this sort of I need to follow the rules, I need to keep fraud out of the system, to this is a universal entitlement system. I'm setting up something that I want people to use, and I want to have and maybe if I listen to the people who would use it, who we want to use it, that will help us design it, for the end user. And that's going to be a big shift. Different folks have tried language to get that concept out before, but this is going to be a very large shift. People also talked about the challenge of there are folks who have focused on education and folks who have focused on childcare, and that we're really going to have to put it together in the strategy of and really push in an advocacy and grassroots strategy, and that by centering family needs, you can it helps you do that in a way.
Yeah. And I think that's where it's critical, Rachel, if you involve parents, because parents cross these lines are created by the structures that fund them. They are not relevant to families. Families often have kids who cross both, they have school age kids, they have kids in pre-K. And I think that's where having parent voice at the table is so critical.
Well, we're about at the end of our time. I want to thank you all so much for coming and for sharing. There is a very lively chat. So what we will do, April, I think we will save the chat and we will send out the resources that have been shared in the chat, and we will send out the slides and a link at least to that Hunt Institute précis, because I think it's the first one I've seen, and then maybe others too. So we will send those things out after. And I hope that we achieved our goals, which were to have everybody walk away with some concrete ideas about what other people are doing that you might be able to bring home, as well as some ideas about what we can do together over the next year or two. And I'll just remind you that 2 weeks from now, on November 18th, we are going to, this same time, 3 p.m. Eastern. I won't try on the fly to do all of the time zones, including Hawaii. But at 3 p.m. Eastern, we will be having the new executive director of NBCDI, Leah Austin, come join us and talk with us about her agenda and what she plans and where they see the next policy agenda for Black children and families headed. So we're excited about that. In the meantime, I hope you all have